So, I was too tired yesterday after my walk to do much of anything. I put on a little bit of mission, but um, I had a couple of topics I wanted to discuss. I didn't take notes or anything. I never do, and I should, because I never say what I mean to. But in this particular one, my mind wandered down the path of the Granfaloon. Something Kurt Vonnegut mentioned back in Cat's Cradle, if I recall correctly. Pretty sure that's right. That was one of the first I read of his. And it's sort of this idea of, a couple who are, so close to one another that they're almost the same person. And it's if one dies, the other dies within like 2 weeks. Now, obviously, that's not the case for me. But the thing is that what's reflected there is sort of my ideal. And I was kind of thinking about it. So, in the sense of there not being much that's exterior, in the case of my recently passed wife and I, we really had no other people. I mean, she may have had people online she talked to, I'm sure, and I have the videos and this, and had the dancing where I don't really meet people. For a while when we first moved to Eugene, I had gaming as well, but I don't feel like I looked back at my other, loves in my life and everything, and I don't feel like I ever really had, in the more comfortable situations, a case where I had a friend who I would talk to about stuff within the relationship. And that's actually kind of where the thought started leading, because then I started thinking about other past relationships that I had, and how they were always at their best, at least in my mind, when this was this total codependency type situation of, there isn't anything else. I find it very, very difficult to interact with people and to be as open as I am on the video with other people. But when I'm in a relationship and it's right, I do feel like I am in that range, okay? I don't go beyond that by much. It's not like I'm dishonest or I'm hiding much. I mean, whatever I'm hiding, I'm probably hiding from myself as well. It's just there's a liberty to think that the other person cares about this shit enough. And, I can do this on video because I know any of you who don't want to hear it, you can turn it off. You don't feel compelled to be watching what I'm babbling about. But if I'm with someone and, I'd go visit people, I went for a walk with someone, I don't feel the capacity to really talk about these very personal, internal things. That's not to say that, conversations can't be broader than that, but whatever. And then I started looking at the relationships I've had, and that where they break down is where that deal doesn't really exist anymore. However, it doesn't exist, right? One part of it is if someone's finding much outside of the relationship, and that's kind of a scary thing, because that's in the sense that it's like a sign of an unhealthy type of relationship pattern, supposedly. However, I can't imagine wanting a relationship where where you have kind of like this broad circle of friends who gossip about your partner too. I just, to me, that's there's something almost sickening about that. And then I did realize, with my psycho ex, I felt to some extent not connected enough with her that I did have to kind of explain to my friends my situation or whatever, in a way that was kind of like excusing, my feelings there or whatever, and that I never completely committed to her, and I don't think I could. Yeah, there were too many things wrong. And then with my first wife, I realized, when we met, she actually had a lot more friends that I think she was closer with and discussed things with more. But as certain ties began binding us closer and closer together, and we became more isolated from other things, I think, not necessarily the best point in our life, but where that comfort set in, where that, setting up house for real kind of happened, is where those barriers started happening more between her and the people that she had connections to. Not so much with me, because the barriers are always there. And that actually it was where I was no longer as dominating a force, no longer as providing the attention maybe she needed, because that comfort got too deep, that chance, perhaps, or whatever, threw her into a position where she reestablished some contact with old friends. And there, it became a sounding board for griefs, about me and about her feelings, instead of confronting it in the relationship or whatever, as maybe would have happened before. But again, there's always this fear thing, right? I feel like something I do, it's almost like a psychic wave that just is just too much for people to handle. I mean, it's not like I throw a tantrum or I mean, I did at times, but later on, and certainly at the point where this was, it's not like I'm throwing a tantrum or anything. It's just sort of this little snap, It's not threatening. It's just clear that I've been displeased, And I think that's where the fear is. I think the fear is of displeasing me in that way, where it's just like, boom. It's just kind of like, and a lot of times it's off little stuff that's, there's no intention, there's no harm intended, there's no harm being done. It's just, I'm being irritated a little bit. And somehow that just hits out, and it really, it's the thing that I feel like just remembering those two longest relationships, 10 years each, really. What developed was sort of this, I don't want, was the female's point of view being, I don't want to have to suffer that, and my first wife put it as walking on eggshells, this last one, I got impressions of that same kind of feeling at times, where, she may touch me and I just sort of flinch away a little bit or whatever. It's just, these are almost my natural reactions to certain things. And there's just nothing that can be done about that. But that maybe within that context of being so close and not having anything else, that becomes more devastating, or I just don't know. I mean, for me, I mean, I can feel like somebody's really being negative towards me or whatever in some way, and I get angry too, I'm like, fine, be that way. And I just withdraw as well. And then, it kind of descends into hell for, a few days or whatever. Not real hell. I just mean like, where we're not really stopping and saying anything to one another, and it's kind of curt and everything, and it's almost like there's a big argument that we're hiding, but it never really happened, and there really isn't one. It's just sort of this feeling of, well, I got rebuffed, so fine, I'm not going to try anymore, whatever it is. And but then after a few days, I'm just kind of like, well, what's going on? What the fuck is happening here? And I'll just kind of bounce in and, maybe say, I don't understand what's going on, but usually it'll just be like, as if there's nothing going on, because I don't understand, And when I ask, and usually it's like, well, I thought you were mad at me, like, okay. Whatever. My anger blows over pretty easily unless it's something serious, and even then it blows over. But yeah, when there is that sounding board that I was talking about, well, then if that's reflective, if that's, accepting, just agreeing, giving advice, whatever, it becomes kind of an echo chamber, and very different from my own, right? Like if I go for a walk and echo thoughts in my head, those thoughts eventually peter out. And they get down to, look, let's go to the rational, logical thing. I'm here for a reason. I'm with this person for a reason. I made certain decisions, certain choices, and reversing them is an expense, and But it's quite possible that other people who don't view things in the particular way that I do, will come to different sorts of thoughts there, and especially if they're echoing them off someone else who has their, sort of common, and looks in and says, well, honestly, I think that your relationship is unhealthy, because I think that would be the common situation. But the problem is that the people I'm attracted to and the people who are attracted to me probably don't fit the common pattern very well. So common pat answers may not be the right ones for them. And, that explains certain things with my first wife as to, like, why after she threw me out, tried to lead a different life, and that drove her into a really bad place, you know, where suicide was something she tried multiple times. Um, when I think, had it not been for those reinforcing words that pushed the that put the bargain that we had, essentially, that we had created together, into a different light. Um, if it were not for those, the bargain would have continued and maybe modified and changed and, you know, mutated. Because some of it was, I was making no more demands. That really was how I saw it. Was that I was foregoing the things I enjoyed with her so that she could accomplish the things she felt she needed to do. You know, in this case, my perspective is that I was granting my wife the freedom to not have obligations. Very similar type of thing. I made no demands anymore. And I can see where that comes off as not caring anymore. For one thing, I'm not trying to push as much as to, hey, let's go for a walk, let's play a game, let's do this. So I'm seeming more and more disconnected. And the few times that maybe it comes out with, oh, gee, I'd really like to do this, I'm less willing as well, not so much as some sort of punishment, but just because I'm no longer expecting anything. You know, I'm expecting that isolation, that mutual isolation, to be the existence, the pattern, the bargain, and it would be harder to break that. I don't know that in either. I know with my first wife there was the case of, I really would like to have a vacation, was what she said at one point, in terms of like, we go someplace. And I made the argument there, and this is the one case that I can remember of that. I make the argument there of, well, I just don't see how we can afford it. You know, I mean, money was tight, and it just, you know, taking time off would be possible, but the idea of spending a couple $1,000s, which was maybe all we had in savings, to just, you know, go someplace seemed crazy to me. There wasn't sort of a, no, we can't do this, but there was, you know, a persuasive argument against it. And that was the only thing of that nature that I can kind of remember. I know that things like going for walks and stuff, you know, had been very common early on and then became less common. Now with my last wife, I can't think of, like, there weren't cases where she'd say, oh, I'd really like to go for a walk, you know, and I would not want to go. You know? It would, and if there was, she would be totally understanding, I think, of that. So I don't know that there was anything like that where I was letting, I think it was just more the, I was not putting any pressure. And I think that's honestly the case in both cases, is that I no longer had expectations. You know, I no longer expected anything from either one beyond just the comfort of just being around, you know, and that, you know, just reached a point where my not having needs anymore somehow made them feel maybe less valuable or something. But, you know, if my needs can't be met for whatever reason, that seems like a reasonable withdrawal. Jeez. And I don't know. But that's the sort of, I think, outline of thoughts that I was having. They never gel completely. And we'll go with that. The walks are emotionally exhausting. Let's just put it that way. Yesterday was shopping. We'll go with more. Yesterday was shopping, which, you know, I'm starting to dread, but not for good reason. Like, it actually puts me in a better mood than most things. And my shopping walk put me in a good enough mood that I went for another walk. And then that was both on Saturday. And then on Friday, I had gone for a walk up to a place, and not only was it a place we had been together up on top of Skinner's, but okay, we had been there once. One of many things that, you know, it's like one of my joys with bringing her here was being able to show her the town, you know, show her different things in the town that I knew about, and to discover new things that I didn't know about. But generally, those discoveries would be on my own, because usually she didn't want to go random places. Sometimes she did. But you know, one of the problems that I see is sort of that, well, if I meet somebody from here, I'm not going to be in that position. I don't know how big a deal that is, but just the, and then I realize all of the, Jesus, it's not just a person in this position with me, it's her, you know. It's the way she said things. It's the things that we shared together. It's those things that are important. Those things that can't be replaced, that I can't just slip into with someone else. Which, you know, when I went for a walk with a male friend, it was kind of interesting because I was showing him areas he hadn't been in the town he grew up in. But it wasn't the same at all, and not just because it's two guys walking together talking, which is different too, but also because it's not all those patterns that I got used to that made her up. You know, it's not her bunch of existence. And it's like I am going to just miss those things. Just, you know. I don't remember if I mentioned this one before on video. Remember when, and then something, you know. Remember when we saw the little dead bird? Remember when, you know, this, I mean, just so many little, that was just a pattern of what she said, the way she said it, in a particular voice and everything. And it just was very charming to me all the time, almost no matter what, even when it was something sad, like remember when we saw the little dead bird. Saw a chipmunk yesterday on my way to shopping, dragging the cart, making all kind of noise, was sunning itself on a rock, and I got within like 3 to 4 feet from it. It hopped a little bit after it noticed me, and but then it just stood, little ears, in the sunlight, kind of in bushes, but still really, really close to me, and I could have. And I don't think I've ever been that close to one for that long, and I know she had never been with that good a view of one for that long. And I mean, you know, for me, it would have been, well, that's kind of neat, you know, if not for her, but she loved them so much, and so it just became another one of those things. Yeah. Well, I think we ought to stop now.